I Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom. Ni hao, buenos dias, buenos tardes, this is Jaquab, welcome. What up, though? So this is a joint for Mixed with Earth. It's a supplemental joint, and it's something that I mentioned intending to share previously. I do, but it goes way long, so I'm doing it again, and seeing if we can keep this in a reasonable brief duration. Well, actually a little less choice because the battery at the moment on the camera is at 25%, so we'll see how long that goes. I'm doing a timestamp at the moment just to get a gauge, so to be honest we might have like 15-20 minutes, something like that. That's all right, we'll see where we go. All right, personal introduction. Peter Johansson Osisi. My spiritual name is Zuri G. It is a multilinguistic name, and it comes from Hebrew, which is my Hebrew name, Zuri ben Yochanan, as well as from Sanskrit. G is a suffix that's added to as a way of saying like beloved, or a communication of closeness, like Gandhiji. So Zuri G is my spiritual name. I ain't gonna get into all the names or whatever, but I was born with another name. That's another story. It's the legacy of slavery. So anyways, I'm born and raised here in the Cuyahoga area. My ancestry is Israel, Ethiopia, Igbo, Akan, Twi, Muskoki, Celtic, Sverige, and Dansk, Scandinavia. Born and raised here. I attended private school for the first 11 years of my life, very Eurocentric. I knew about like the distinction of race, but it wasn't the biggest thing. It was class and money, and my insecurity was based upon that perceived lower status of how much money, income my parents had, and this and the other. So any insecurities or whatever were focused on that rather than necessarily on my race. Although I did experience considerable certain instances of racism during my experience at my school, and also a lot of love and support and appreciation and guidance as well. Go to high school, huge difference. Graduating class for my 8th grade of private school was 13 students. The population of the public school that I went to was over 3,000, about 4,000 students, 4,000. And the racial dynamics is different. Over 50% people of African ancestry. The culture is different, and I begin to become increasingly aware of racism, what people refer to as institutional racism. And me being who I am, I'm like, okay, so how do we solve the problem? And so the focus was often about money. We need money for food. We need money for clothing. We need money for education. We need money for housing. We need money for this, that, and the other. Now, the other thing was also curriculum, education, having certain knowledge of self. So all that being said, that was very influential, and it gave me a sense of purpose about uplifting particularly the black community, and I got support for that. Like I recognized, like, okay, I was a misfit. I mean, I didn't get along with any of the cliques that's not accurate. I wasn't like deep with any of the cliques at high school, but I wasn't like ostracized or hated by any of the cliques either. I got along with all the cliques. Actually, I got along with all the cliques. Didn't get invited to the parties or whatever, but I could speak with everybody, and there was no beef and everything else like that. Though did get into some scraps and this and the other here and there. Anyways, so, but what I did recognize is that when I started like becoming like my upper class years at high school, I started like talking about uplifting the community, and I started talking with a little bit of fervor. Like cats were responsive to that, and like cats were like, "Yo, okay, he's talking about something." So, I get a sense of self value, and additionally, and I start seeing things. It's way further intricate than that, but that's basically the gist of it. And I make a decision to go to an HBCU. So I go to Hampton University, and I study economics. And when I study economics, I recognize, okay, I'm to do like I know I have an idea of what's going on, but I still have to learn further about how the game works, because I see the limitations of just doing like the community development corporation kind of scenario. That's the thing that was going on 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And so like I know too much to be satisfied with that. I have to know increasingly systemically what the game is and how to do it. So I go to law school and I leverage myself, take out loans and everything else like that, which is another thing. But long story we're getting into here. Try to wrap this up in the next 2 minutes. I go to law school. Actually, I go to business school first. I travel abroad. That was awakening. That was life-changing, being abroad for the first time, studying abroad for the first time, interacting with students, classmates, colleagues from all around the earth, and connecting the dots, seeing like further how the game is played. Come back here and finish up business school, go on to work with Amnesty International, which is a human rights organization. It is based in the office I work in is based in the Potomac area, Washington, D.C. I was preparing for going to law school. I had already got accepted when was deferring enrollment. So I worked with Amnesty International for a year, worked in the D.C. public school system, teaching human rights, and having awesome conversations with high school students who know what the issues are. They don't know what human rights is like as a term, but they're like, yo, we know we know what justice is. You can call it what you like, but we know it very well. Human rights education tends to be a rather difficult subject to broach amongst socioeconomic elite because it's very uncomfortable. And so people just say, oh, never heard about that. Oh, that's very interesting. But it's just a very difficult convo. But when we went to the high schools in D.C., like, yo, we chop it up. Anyways, we did that. And again, transformative, beautiful experience, challenging experience, as well as like my first and perhaps only like conventional gig. And I got a sense of what that was like. I worked for Inroads. I worked as an Inroads intern for 4 years with a Key Corp here in the Cuyahoga area, a banking corporation. So I knew what corporate life was like, and I knew that gig, and I knew like that. Yeah, I can't do that. So for numerous reasons. But anyways, all right. So I went to law school. Started law school. First year is hellish. For a number of reasons, standard reasons, but then also particularly being a descendant of African slaves and just the whole notion of how racism is the law, and even like the woke activists don't even address this because it undergirds the society and all the institutions that support woke activists. And additionally, so anyways, all right, digressing. I see that up close, but at the same time, I see like the brethren who are particularly at that age of life, on stage of life, who are like wide open, the eyes are wide open in terms of like a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed or something like that. Anyways, my point is like Cats is like compassionate, and when you meet somebody and you get to have an extended conversation with people, beautiful brethren. Everybody has beauty, everybody has truth, and so it's difficult to just like categorically lambast and forsake the legal system and all lawyers and everything else like that, because many of my closest brethren in life, kinfolk in life, are lawyers. So that's like the tug and the angst or whatever else. It's like can't completely avoid it, but at the same time don't want to get enveloped within it either. And so that was law school. In the meanwhile, like I had to make a decision for myself of like well, who am I going to be in this process? And I recognized like, yo, I'm going to be like love, and I'm going to be truth, and I'm going to be honesty. I'm going to be as righteous as I can be, and I'm going to genuinely embrace people, and I'll be always willing to chop it up and talk and have an honest conversation, a mutual respectful conversation. So a big part of that was me going to Africa. I did a study abroad in South Africa after my first year during that summer, and that again spiritually awakening and affirmational. And I got back after that hellish year and just like, yo, everything's going to be all right. Whatever happens, it's going to be all right. And that stays with me through this day, because once like there's that kind of like awakening of like that connection of self, and additionally, it's not ultimate, something often, but there's a constancy there, and I anyway, all right, so that gives me a sense of peace and tranquility and actually confidence. So that second year, like, I look everybody in the eye when I walk in the hallways, and I notice like everybody else avoids each other's eye contact. And not only do I look at people in the eye, whoever looks at me, I say hi, and like people respond to that. And eventually, like I got known for doing that, not like I do now, but like people would respond, and people would stop and say, hey, yeah. And in a very elitist environment where there's fierce, cutthroat competition, for somebody to be like, oh, lovey-dovey, and it's not like that, but kumbaya, whatever, something to that effect. It's like, okay, something's happening here. And so there was genuine trust in building, and then I got beat down by the police and charged with federal felony assault. That was my beginning of third year, and got support for that. Saw a little bit about life, recognized that cats is out for playing for keeps, and again, another lesson of life. So eventually, the federal government breaks itself and drops the case, and that might seem snarky, whatever. But when going through that process, that's effectively what is it. And I'm just communicating the vernacular that I'm communicating in the moment, and that's a very accurate way of describing it. So they dropped the case. There were papers involved, but effectively they knew it was bullshit, and it was dropped. So I wasn't perfect in that scenario, but they didn't charge me with anything else except for a 25-year penalty in federal jail of federal felony assaulting a police officer. No disorderly conduct, no this, that, and the other, just bah. So anyways, that's another story. All right, that 2 minutes is up. How about that? So after that, I graduated from law school amidst extenuating circumstances and an additional semester. I graduated from law school, and I know I'm not going to practice law. I'm not going to take the bar, and that was very disagreeable amongst my support base. And up to that point, I was working on establishing a multicultural think tank called ASONA with colleagues, but again, all the support that I received through the years for me uplifting community. Oh, how'd I get from uplifting the black community to like doing kumbaya multiculturalism? Because I recognize in studying the game, it's interconnected. Like the solutions for people of African ancestry in this continent, in the United States initially, is exactly connected with the conditions that are experienced in the favelas, in the shanty towns, in the barrios, and in place all around the earth. So it's like, the genuine solution is collective and cooperation, and cats ain't trying to hear that. Even to this day, cats are very divisive. People even talk about intersectionality, but even that is just enveloped in like a Eurocentric elitist trope that's just part of the plantation. So, and I don't want to be categorically dismissive or disrespectful, but I'm trying to summarize this very briefly and being candid about it. So anyways, cats is out for themselves, and if they see something, an opportunity to build with another group, there has to be like some kind of quid pro quo. What are we going to get out of this? And the multicultural think tank joint that I was building in law school, it was a genuine kind of like, yo, let's chop it up, let's bring our experiences to the table, and let's see where this dialogue goes, and like build accordingly. So there are things that are like that at this moment. I observe. But even still, I get to see it in kind of like a genuine, challenging way. A lot of it is somewhat attached to a certain notion of secular multicultural nationalism as a foundation or premise of commonality. But even then, that's very much usurped in everything else. So, in terms of genuine, like international, to be honest, and this is a limitation that I have, genuine international cooperation requires interlinguistic cooperation, and that means having language proficiencies to communicate the message and everything in an egalitarian type of way, not just a matter of like, this is what we're doing and now let's translate it into all the different languages. No, it's like the decision makers are fluent, and their mother tongue is other than English, and their allegiances and additionally are other than exclusively and predominantly within English speaking society. So that's the nature of genuine international cooperation, solidarity. What do they say? They say what's it called, allyship, and intersectionality and everything else like that. Even just the notion of intersectionality, it's like emphasizing the compartments. It's not emphasizing the confluence and the harmony and the commonality. So it's a divisive word and a concept at the very beginning. So that's a lot of academia as well. If you recognize academia as like the bastion of socioeconomic apartheid in not even just Western civilization, but just in contemporary geopolitical civilization, if we can utilize that as a concept. So like all the things, all the jargon and everything else like that is rife with that same intentionality and dependent upon the structures and systems of that intentionality as well. So this isn't supposed to be a downer, but anyways, this is like somewhat of the explanation of why I like distance myself. So as one might imagine, Cass didn't like that too much. I got locked up right after I graduated from law school, accused of psychosis, schizophrenia, just whatever. Those are the predominant ones, and then drugged and subject to nasty business for a while. So anyways, all right, spiritual awakening. How much I get into this? All right, seriously, I'm going to finish this in like 2 minutes, God willing. I find a law that I believe in and that I can be a protagonist in, and it is spiritual. I study religions of the world, and I continue to do that. I find answers and truth within that, and solace and comfort. There are specific canon of scriptures that I study regularly, continuing through today, and that I begin to practice in that process. It is the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita, the Digha Nikaya, and the Dhammapada, the Gospels, the Quran, and the Tao Te Ching. Those are the 5 predominant scriptures. But then I also study and practice additional scriptures and teachings. And so I eventually find my religiosity, which is the earth, my political, ethnic allegiance, economic directive, earth. And so that's what I am, and I do that to the best of my ability, and I continue to study and work and strive to share the experience of the earth, the stories, the songs, the teachings, the narratives of the earth in a pragmatic way with the rest of the earth, identifying the world teachers, identifying like the basic concepts and principles. This is beginning to drizzle here. I got my computer out here, so I'm being mindful of that as well. The basic teachings that are shared and the teachings that are different, particularly for the purpose of reconciliation, and additionally. So that's what I do. I'm a spiritual diplomat for past 20 years, and at this point I'm a spiritual teacher. And so as a spiritual diplomat, I attend conferences, I do talks, very modestly, in terms of modest number of different things. But the main thing I do is study, to be able to bring something to the table that's legit. So my expertise is scriptural reasoning, which is usually scriptural reasoning is when people from different traditions, their own tradition, are knowledgeable about their own scriptures, and they talk about a specific topic. It might be peace, it might be economic justice, it might be ethnic reconciliation, but then sharing like what the teachings are from one's own tradition about that specific topic, and then discussing that. And it's a very delicate process, because people can't just say, "Oh, I disagree with that," because that's like, civilization's talking right there. So it's just like interesting. And so it's a very nuanced way of communication, without challenging, without negating or affirming the claims or experiences or teachings of others, but learning how to discuss it and learn from it. And it doesn't have to be all agree at the end of the day, but it's just a matter of learning, understanding better, having better respect. So usually that's the case. One person speaks about their own tradition in a knowledgeable way, and then it's a collective conversation, and even just the way it's framed, like where it's held, who the host is, what are the precepts of and the pretenses of egalitarianism and balance in the process. It's a very involved scenario. Now, what I do, I participate in that through the years, but what my expertise particularly is that I have a knowledge of all the traditions. Now, my knowledge is very extremely modest. Compared to rabbis and gurus and priests and bodhisattvas. I can't deny myself being a bodhisattva, but like the traditionally trained clergy from each tradition, like my knowledge is extremely modest. So Cass ain't calling me to be an expert speaker about any of these muftis. That's who Cass go to when they want specific information and authority from any one particular tradition. However, what I do have is a thorough, genuine knowledge about each of these traditions and the teachings from each of the traditions and how they relate and intersect with each other. Confluence and relate with each other. So that's what my expertise is, and it's actually rather unique. Anyways, that's 2 minutes. All right, that's 2 minutes is up. So that's what I do today, and I mixed race is a part of it. Mixed race is significant, and that's actually where my focus is. I've been doing mixed race for 20 years as well. And what I do at this point is a fusion. How about that? Between or amidst interfaith and mixed race. So recognizing the benefit that mixed race brethren gain from having a transtemporal context through which to reconcile the contemporary experiences of life, meaning getting beyond the boxes, getting some perspective that religiosity provides, spirituality, the wisdom provides, to be able to perceive just like the borders and the conflicts and everything else, to be reconciled as oneself. So there's that. Now, all right, that's just for me. That's my personal introduction. So now I'm going to get into some concepts here. Again, it's we get some drizzle. So it ain't necessarily the most conducive to the circuitry here. Mixed heritage concepts. So the first one I share is, and I share a lot of this already, like here and there, and still, like I'm working on, like putting this together in a very concise, succinct, organized way. I have yet to do that because I'm working on many things right now. So for the moment, this is what I have. The first joint is ancestral community. So there's a sequence here. And I'll just say I won't get into a lot of like the kind of commentary about why and like how this compares to what people are doing at the moment and why I emphasize this or whatever. I'm just going to say it and invite commentary accordingly. So ancestral community, that's the first joint. There are three things with this one. The first one is personally, my personal identity is my personal heritage, or my personal, I say personal identity is a communal. Oh, how about this? My personal mixed heritage is a communal identity. So it's not, it's other than just like a point or an oddity or a unique experience. It is everything that the person comes from. So whatever the ethnicity is, the nationality, or tradition and addition, whatever, it's all of that. It's not just one piece of one portion of like the intersection between those things. So that's the first thing, recognizing personally my personal mixed heritage is a communal identity, identifying with all my ancestors, all the heritage and everything else like that. So, and belonging, having legit stake, equal stake. Now, equal, it's beneficial to be knowledgeable, and that influences one's credibility and standing within a society or anywhere. So, but at the same time, there is undeniable belonging. Anyone who does deny that is abrogating the precepts of ancestral heritage in and of itself. So there's that. That's the first joint. Second joint is our mixed heritage, like this experience that we share in terms of being mixed, whatever our mixed is. Whatever our mixed heritage is individually, respectively. Our mixed heritage is an ancestral community. So rather than looking at it as a special interest or a commonly shared oddity, a shared experience of being odd or whatever else, and that being the limitation of the conversation, the discussion and communication and cooperation, recognizing that our bond that brings us together as mixed people is an ancestral community. Beyond politics, beyond economics, beyond even religiosity, if we can recognize that in an appropriate way, it's an ancestral community. When we recognize that our individual identity, our individual experience is a communal identity, we are recognizing that we are coming from our ancestors. And so there's that belonging. I'll be brief with this. There is that belonging, and that belonging is based upon being a descendant of the ancestors with whom our brethren, our kinfolk who are around us are derived from as well. And so as mixed people, that on this earth at the moment, that experience of communal identity it tends to be rather narrow, meaning that many people who live together, who look like each other, come from and perceive each other as coming from a very kind of fixed or a narrow or smaller like set of ancestry. So the communal identity is increasingly homogenous, and it's easier to recognize the similarity as such. And so that notion of being an ancestral community, that communal identity equating to being an ancestral community for people who are homogenous seems like a very simple step, because we all look alike, we all come from the same place. Look at us, we look like each other. So there's that. But as mixed people, to recognize ourselves as an ancestral community, when we look all the different ways that we do, it's like, wait, hold up, what do we have in common? But recognizing that our community, our heritage, our mixed heritage is an ancestral community. So indeed, like there is a continuum amongst all of us, because all those communal identities that we respectively have, when we look at the aggregate, it connects all of us, and so that we all come from the same aggregate set of ancestry of this earth. And that leads to that third step, which is that if we look at the nature of an ancestral community in that family tree, we have our forebears. Oftentimes our forebears have siblings, our uncles and aunties, tantas and uncles, and our tantas and uncles have children who are our cousins. And so our cousins, because the tanta uncles tend to be not related, that means that our cousins have ancestors that are different than our ancestors, but we're still part of the same ancestral community. So that's the idea of ancestral community. And so when we look at ourselves as mixed heritage, and just look at the earth in general, we recognize that we're all cousins, and that in that recognition, the entire earth is part of the same extended family, literally. It's only just a question of the degrees to which what type of cousins we are with each other. So along those lines, the aggregate mixed heritage ancestral community is the entire earth, and there's that. So all right, here's something. This is the next concept, like the personal search, and this is an affirmation, the mixed heritage affirmation that is invited, that each individual is invited to do. It's a suggestion. It's a recommendation too. Let's see. I'm going to check my battery thing. 18, so that's not too bad. All right, there's a countdown one with you there. So, and also an hour is the strong limitation here for this recording guideline, I should say. All right, so second concept is personal or affirmation, mixed heritage affirmation. So in this one, this is what individuals are invited to do. First, to identify one's ancestry. I'll say this in the second person. You are invited to identify your ancestry as much as you can at this moment, as comfortable. However you feel comfortable doing that, whether it's getting DNA, whether it's going to government records, whether it's talking to your parents, your family members, grandparents, cousins, whoever who may have some knowledge, going to libraries, heritage libraries, particularly if you're going to like the Eastern Hemisphere, to Europe, to Africa, and additionally talking to people who know tribal leaders, and additionally going to the ancestral libraries in Europe that are there that have like a record of the names and everything else. But finding your ancestors as much as possible at this moment, in the way that you're comfortable. And then in doing that, the next step is to draw a map of the geography of where all your ancestors come from. So wherever your ancestors come from in this life or on this earth, to draw a map that connects all those regions with each other. So just for your own visual edification and processing, just to see the continuity in one way or another of all your ancestors together on that map. And then the second part of that second joint is in drawing that map to begin from what you know about your family narrative, to consider the migration of your ancestors to the point where you are at this moment. So those are the first two steps. Now there's the third step that I wrote in here. I kind of added as a that I added at this stage rather than at some point else in this delivery. But this is the third joint, to recognize this. When we consider all our ancestors, when you consider all your ancestors, through all the generations, for thousands and thousands of years, each generation, wherever your ancestors are, wherever our ancestors are, there is a singular phenomena, a singular authority, a law that guides all of your ancestors, that guides all our ancestors. And I've said this before, we can call that single authority God. We can call it the law of science. We can call it Tao, Brahman, Wankantanka, any of the names that we find, or any name that we find most resonant. Allah, any name that we find most applicable and accurate, proximate with what we perceive and understand as that single phenomena that guides the universe. It's the same phenomena that guides all of our ancestors to do everything that our ancestors do through each generation and through the entire migration that eventually and inevitably leads to us being who we are, leads to you being who you are. So it's an important thing, particularly for mixed people, to recognize that there is a continuity. There's not just a continuity, but an intentionality. It's not just some accident. No, it's providence. So with that, then we can better start to think about our purpose. Like, why? What am I supposed to be doing with this? Is it taking on the burden of saving the world or whatever else? That's a little bit excessive, but at the same time, maybe not so if we do it collective. So there is that certain conscientiousness and proclivities that we are provided with to do that type of service, but it's not some imperialistic endeavor. It is increasingly actually a humbling and immediate walk in life. So anyways, that's another story. But that's the second joint. So the third step, actually this is the fourth step because I just did the insertion of the third step. The fourth step is once you find, travel that path of the first three steps, finding your ancestors, mapping your ancestors, and recognizing the continuity, then there's a decision for you to make. And that decision is, what type of mixed person do you want to be? What type of mixed person do you commit to being? And there are three different categories that I kind of describe, and obviously there's an entire spectrum. However, it's for each person to decide on each person's own volition. So at one point there's assimilation of just acquiescing to the norm of whatever the society is, or maybe just one particular ethnic or religious heritage or whatever else. There's that decision, legit. Second one is to just focus on one's own ancestry. So focusing on each one's ancestry, but just only on that, not everybody's ancestry or whatever else. That's legit, cool. There's that. And then further towards the spectrum, there is identifying with the entire earth. Like, regardless of what one recognizes as one's immediate ancestral heritage, recognizing that the experience of being mixed is intrinsically aligned. And there's benefit in maintaining allegiance and cooperation with all mixed people, and so the destination of that, so to speak, is identifying with the entire earth and learning about the entire earth. And so there's that scenario. Now, I'm maybe somewhat biased because that's the scenario that I look at within myself. That's the one I commit to. And each one has its challenges. Each one has its benefits. The consideration is how brethren, kinfolk on each of these decision paths are able to continue to cooperate with each other in the way that each one is respectively comfortable, because that's the nature of who we are, and this experience. So each one may have different responsibilities, different levels of involvement, and additionally different levels of benefit derived from it additionally, but it's beneficial first to just make that decision, be comfortable in communicating it, and not pretend one or the other, and not be apologetic about it, but then also not expecting others to make the same decision for themselves. And when we do that, and we can recognize that within each other, know what to expect from ourselves, know what we are committing to each other, then we can continue along those lines to build accordingly. So that's like the fourth step in this particular concept of ancestral community identity. So that's the second joint. All right. Actually, it continues further. There was a line, but the line is just the next section. So after making that decision about how you decide to identify and the commitment that you make accordingly, I'm trying to do. My previous computer that I had out here, I subjected to considerable challenges within the elements, and I'm trying to be increasingly genteel with this joint. So that's another element that's precipitating some expedient type of completion of this session. Let me tell it whilst it continues on. I can. How about this? Let's get comfortable. We're gonna do this. How about that? Can this work? Maybe so. Oi! Something just happened there. Alright. So it says it's reconnecting, but it doesn't seem to be doing it. And that would be the phone, that would be the computer. Hey, well, maybe the decision has been made. 15% we're at getting the warning. And it's probably chewing up energy. It says connecting, it's acting like it's on, but do not know. So, you know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to go inside and finish this inside. So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, alright, because it's being unresponsive. So, oh no. I'm already getting the... Okay, that's just alright. So we're going to close this up too.